Hello there, GCSEers, and today we're going to explore the question, what is pilgrimage for Christians? Now, pilgrimage is a spiritual journey to a special place that Christians find important. Now, places are very special to human beings. People place a great significance on certain times and certain events that have happened. For example, for me, the Bet365 Stadium is obviously a particularly important place because the greatest football team in the world play there. However, other places are very important to me. For example, the Old Course at St Andrews, where every 5 years I go with certain other people, my sons, to enjoy the golf, and we watch the world's greatest players. And it's become a very special place, a place where people go to play golf, and they almost make a pilgrimage there, a spiritual journey themselves. But for Christians, going to a particular place is really important to certain Christians. And religion in history has been an important reason for people to travel thousands of miles beyond really their capabilities to do so. For Christianity, there are certain special places that they believe are sacred or holy. You could include the places that Jesus was born, the places where Jesus lived. The Holy Land is particularly important. But because many Christians believe in the resurrection of the body, Roman Catholics, for example, they believe their bodies can receive a spiritual healing by going on a particular journey. And one way they do this is by visiting holy places, places associated with Jesus, as we've seen, or different holy Christian people. They believe that these places give a certain spiritual boost for them to be able to live their lives in the worship of God. They also believe that in some way the journey itself can be a spiritual cleansing for forgiveness of sins. We're going to look at two different places of pilgrimage, particularly important to Roman Catholics, but also other Christians of other denominations, Lourdes and Santiago de Compostela. We're going to begin with Lourdes, and we've looked at this before. We looked at it in our Year 8 course. And it's particularly important because in 1858 a young peasant girl named Bernadette claimed to see a vision of Mary 18 times. Now Mary, as we know, is Jesus' mum. Bernadette was just a peasant girl who had a very poor family. Her dad suffered an accident in 1854 and the family lived in a single room in the old city jail. Bernadette was very ill and unable to go to school to learn how to read and write. During the visions, Bernadette was told to do certain things by the lady, including holding a candle where the flames licked her hands but did not burn her. She was also told to ask people to go to that place to Lourdes in pilgrimage. During the final vision, the lady told her to dig a hole and to drink the water that would come out. By this time, there was many people who would go and see her in a crowd and would watch Bernadette. They thought that she was mad as she put the muddy water into her mouth to drink. The water soon became clear, and people believe it has a miraculous healing quality. It cured one of her friend's dislocated arms. Bernadette also said that the lady had called herself the Immaculate Conception, which is one of the reasons she was believed, as she wasn't very intelligent, certainly not from going to school, and it was a title that Mary had that Bernadette could not have known about. Over the next few years there was an inquiry into the visions, and many people were claiming that the water had miraculous properties, and it was announced that the events by the Roman Catholic Church, that the events were real, and Lourdes became a very important place of pilgrimage. Many people came to Lourdes in pilgrimage and claimed to be cured there, including a lady who came from Birmingham in 1942. We looked at her in Year 8, and if you remember, her name was called Sally McCloy. She had cancer and claimed that during the blessing with the Blessed Sacrament she was cured. Now you remember the Blessed Sacrament from our last lesson, and Roman Catholics in particular believe it's important. They believe it becomes the actual body of Jesus, and as you can see from the picture here, this is how the sick are blessed in Lourdes. She expected to die there, but went on to live for many more years. Today, millions of people visit Lourdes, a town about the size of Droitwich. They go there for their own spiritual healing and forgiveness. They often go to help with the very sick, particularly young people. Those particularly sick people still hope to be cured in Lourdes. They attend Mass, go to the grotto to pray, and take part in 2 large processions each day. The Blessed Sacrament procession in the afternoon, the one we've looked at because Sally McCloy believes she was cured there, Here the Eucharist is processed through the domain. And finally the torchlight procession, where thousands of people say the Rosary, a Roman Catholic formal prayer, whilst carrying torchlights. Most pilgrimages last a week, and as we can see, it can be quite an amazing place and very beautiful and inspiring for many of the people who go there. The second place of pilgrimage we're going to look at is a place called Santiago de Compostela. Now Santiago is in the north of Spain and is a major Christian pilgrimage place for many more years than Lourdes, since the 9th century CE. It's different to pilgrimage at Lourdes, as the journey is the most important thing. For people who go to Lourdes, the place itself and what actually happens there and the miracles that are associated with it actually are the most important thing. But for Santiago de Compostela, it is actually getting there that is the most amazing thing for them. Santiago de Compostela means in English St. James the Apostle, who was one of Jesus' disciples. And there are two traditions around the city. Number one, that St. James actually preached the gospel here shortly after Jesus' death. And secondly, number two, that his relics, the relics are like the bones and artifacts that he used, things he used during Mass for example, were brought here after his death. Some believe that the two stories are linked, that St. James preached here and returned to Judea where he was killed, but his body was returned to Spain afterwards. Now since about the 9th century, pilgrims have been going to Santiago de Compostela, and many people still go today. They make the trip to visit St. James's relics. Now they must do this under their own steam, and today usually that happens via walking or cycling. Many travel for hundreds of miles away. It is seen as a form of spiritual growth, following a spiritual path. The symbol of St. James is the scallop shell, which is common in the coastline of that part of Spain, and was often collected as proof of a completed pilgrimage. Today it marks the different routes from all over Europe, and the pilgrims carry the shell. So as they move from France and different places, Portugal and even England, the shell is the mark of the route that they go down to get to Santiago. There are hostels and towns along the way that have grown because of the way, which is known as the Camino de Santiago. The pilgrimage finishes with a pilgrim mass in the Cathedral of Santiago, a remarkable building, very beautiful, which happens every day at 12 o'clock and at 7:30. Here, pilgrims often see the Bot de Fumero, which today is a symbol, but used to be used as the pilgrims were very unwashed. And as you can see here in this short little video clip, you can see it's quite an amazing sight. It's actually one of the biggest of its kind that actually makes the whole cathedral smell wonderful, and actually the viewing is absolutely brilliant. Pilgrims can then be forgiven of their sins in confession, and here are some of the confessional boxes that line the cathedral. And they then go to the place where the relics of St. James are held in the cathedral. Now, thousands of people make the Camino de Santiago every year, and hundreds of thousands of people go to Lourdes. So you can see how important that pilgrimage is for Christians.